now that people have kind of figured out where they're sitting. Can we get that door closed? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Game Design Strategy Workshop. Oh, that didn't work. There we go. If you don't know me, my name is Matt Rainey. I am the, what?
I just read your slide.
I am the head mentor of VCS Robotics and the Phoenix Metro Ambassador. I am also, I'm also the reason why Kickoff is here and not at ASU, so that we don't break fire code. Man, did you have them do this? 17th season and first, head coach. I created Valley X Robotics back in 08, 09, so I've been around for a minute. I am the guy who is much better than David, though. No.
Best man at the wedding.
Yeah, but it was my wedding. It was my wedding. And I do work here at Valley Christian Schools. What? Oh, yeah.
Where?
That's my wife. She's up at the cabin. She's enjoying her time off in the cooler weather. I wish I was up there. It's been a fun day outside of this. Who's Valley X Robotics plus 3 Robotics Blue Crew? Those are our 3 teams. We have 2 FTC teams and 1 FRC team. We are the 2015 FTC World Champs. Again, 17th season doing first for FTC, so we've been around for a minute. We've been to the World Champs 7 times out of the past 16 years. Inspire Award winner twice in Arizona, again, out of Valley Christian Schools. Who here wants to start building a robot? Have you figured out your strategy?
Yeah.
That's much better than last year.
Oh my God.
That is much better than last year. We got to go over strategy and why it's better than design. And why you need to start with your strategy first before you start doing your design. In the same breath, agenda for today, strategy before design, design process, SRA, basic overview of the game, and into the deep strategy. Have you read the game manual? Yes. You haven't read all of it. I know that's a lie. How many pages is in the game manual this year? Competition manual.
700.
700. 142 pages this year. Notice how 42 keeps coming up. We don't have a weight this year, but 42 keeps coming up. If you haven't read it, read it. I can't tell you how many people come to competition, come to qualifiers, and haven't read the game manual. Especially with this year, be reading that competition manual. Strategy design. At the same breath, you need to have a strategy and design, or a design out of your strategy. What is the design process? You have your final design. We're all future engineers in here, most of us. Engineers never have a final design. They keep reiterating it. You evaluate your problem. You research different ways of doing it. You design something, you prototype it, and you test it. That continues over and over and over. And as engineers know, most of the time that never stops. SRA, what is SRA? SRA is a term that we use with Valley X and us 3. It is your speed, your reliability, and your accuracy. If you don't have all 3 of these, you're not doing great on the field. Most robots that are doing great on the field have all 3 of these. If you're missing one, you're not doing so good. So keep in mind SRA. Have you read the game manual? Yes. You haven't read all of it, so read it. What? I mean, we could just start going over the game manual in here. That'd be really boring, though. Yeah. It's not what you came for.
Do that.
All right.
That'd be so cool and funny.
Basic overview of the game. You have your submersible, which is your center structure. Your net zones are your areas right next to your basket. Your observation zones are your human player. And your scent zones are where you're hanging from. That's your white taped off areas. With the submersible, you have your rungs that you actually hang on, your low and your high, and your low and your high chambers where you're scoring those specimens at. On the sides of the field, you have your baskets, your high and your low. There's some of your heights. We'll still go over that in a minute. Keep in mind with baskets, you can score your neutrals and your alliance specific, but with your specimens, you can only do your alliance specific ones. Pre-match, on the field are 3 alliance samples on each of the spike marks. They're not actually standing up, they're laying down. That's in the game manual, buried in the game manual. So they're laying down on that spike mark, covering that mark. New this year to drive team, they're laying down. They're not standing up, they're laying down. New this year, that's unusual like the past, if that sample is crooked on that line mark, you as a drive team are allowed to fix it to be straight. If it's straight and you turn it sideways, that you can't do that, but you can fix it. You don't have to ask the referees to fix it. On the field as well as 6 neutrals. Keep in mind though, during autonomous, the field is split in half. You're not allowed on the other side. Submersible, there's 15 blue, 15 red, and 30 neutral samples in the center. Robots are placed in your boxed areas, against your wall, out of your net zone, and your observation zone. They cannot be in those taped off alliance spaces. Your human player starts with 2 alliance specific samples and 2 neutral samples, as well as 20 clips. If you want to preload, you can preload a sample or a specimen out of those ones there. Keep in mind, your refs are not going to tell you to preload it. So if you forget to preload it, that sucks. So preload your stuff. Again, you would know that if you read the game manual, right? Autonomous, different ways of scoring. Notice this year, as we go through this, autonomous and tele-up points are the exact same between the two. The upside with scoring in autonomous is you get that same score again as long as they're still in that area that they were scored in before. Parking in your observation zone, 3 points. Net zone, 2, 4, and 8. Chambers, 6 and 10. And you are sent during autonomous. If you're touching that low rung at the end of autonomous, it's at 3 points, just like parking in the observation zone. Tele-up, again, 3, 2, 4, 8, 6, 10, and 3. And then end game, while there's not truly an end game, there is still the buzzer and everything. During an end game, there are some of the rulings of what you can and can't do when they're in areas. Level 1, 2, and 3. This is where a lot of people were confused and were going, wait, what? When I was speaking on the field with them. Level 1, you're touching the floor and the low rung. That's 3 points. Level 2, you're hanging on the low or the high rung below the low rung, but off of the floor. That's a level 2. A level 3 is hanging on the high rung above the low rung. That's 30. But as we're going to get into it, you cannot just go for the high rung right off the bat. There's certain things you have to do to get to that high rung. Samples versus specimens. A sample is that. A specimen is once you add a clip to the sample. Right? Once a sample has a clip on it, it is a specimen. Keep in mind, specimens cannot go in the baskets. And samples can't go on the chambers. You can't fit them there. Yes?
Is there a rule how you position the clip on the...
Nope. So notice here, you can clip it either direction. There. Either way counts. There's certain things you might want to do and certain ways you want to clip it, because if you think about it, there's only so much that can fit on it. Minors penalty points. Minors are 5, majors are 15 this year. Don't get penalty points. If you're playing defense, certain areas, you can get penalized pretty dang quickly. Yep.
Does it matter which way we put the specimen onto the bar?
No, as long as it's supporting itself. We'll go over most of the questions at the end. So if I don't answer your questions while we're going, we'll get it at the end. Keep in mind your horizontal limit this year, G418. Preventing gameplay, G404, 411, 412, 425, 426. In gameplay, G420, 427. Notice something. Each one of these starts with a G. With the competition manual, anything that's game specific starts with a G. Basically, it's your what it is, and this is listed at the beginning of the manual. So if it's game specific, it'll start with a G and what chapter it's in and what rule it is. So it's chapter 4, rule 18. So it's kind of, anybody that's used to FRC, this is basically FRC's style of manual that FTC has now adopted. That some like and some don't. Where's David? I don't know if David left. Horizontal limit. This is where a lot of people are confused already. G418. That is an overall 42 by 20. So if your frame of your robot sits in the middle of your 42 by 20 space, you're good there. Whereas if, let's say that didn't exist, we're going to go over here. See how their extension at the back of the frame here is at the 42 limit? Even if that goes in, I can't extend out here because I'm past the 42. Make sense? See how he's in the back of the frame here? He's at 42. This one, he just adjusted himself that he's in the middle. Your frame is also included in that 42-inch boundary. You have to pay attention to that this year. You will get penalized pretty heavily if you go outside of that.
How they're measuring that? You have a box, are we?
Most likely it's going to get measured at inspection. I don't know how that all goes. That hasn't been released on how we do that. My guess is we'll have you basically show how far you can extend everything all at once. So for some teams that you might, if you're a little bit more advanced, you might have an extension out and an extension up. If that extension up is going out this way and out this way, make sure that you're not past your 42. Yeah.
Does it include if I have a piece attached, so like the flat piece?
The game element doesn't count as part of it. It's just your robot. Have you read the game manual?
Yes.
No, you haven't. We literally it just came out. Well, the rest of it came out because half of it's been released already before today. So read it. There's a trend going on here. Some of you have already been through my things and know that keeps coming up. Chambers, rungs, barriers, different heights. Some of you guys were asking me what the heights were. Chambers, you're 13 inches to the low, 26 to the high, and that's to the top of the bar. Keep in mind 10.5.2. I think it's also 10.5.3 also has something in there about it, about what a specimen and a sample is. We've kind of already gone over that, but again, read the manual. Rung, low is 20 inches, high is 26 inches. Your barrier is 2 inches off the ground. So technically, you might still be able to fit almost a full 18-inch robot through there if you are really wanting to go inside the submersible, which I would say no to. Your barrier, 2 inches. On the rung side, it's a 1-inch square. On the other side, it's a 2-inch bracket, but again, still 2 inches off the ground. That is to contain all of the samples in the center. Keep in mind, one sample or specimen. Baskets, 2, 4, and 6 points again. Your net zone, of course, it's on the floor, so it's 0. Low, 25, high is 43. There is a discrepancy in the manual right now of what the actual height is of that. The picture says 43, but the wording says like 41. So that'll get fixed. Something to keep in mind, who have been in FRC before, updates are going to act like the FRC updates. You'll have team updates that come out periodically that update the game manual. So keep watching for those updates as they come out. Those will supersede, if they haven't already been fixed inside of the manual, what it is, and if there's any updates they have to do to the field. 9.6, again, specimen versus sample, and G425. Read your game manual. Right?
No.
Read it. We just keep getting more exclamation points. I can't get across enough. Even with my presentation last year, people still didn't read it. Things to think about: space and limiting of scoring. Space, your submersible is a 4-foot by 4-foot footprint on the field. Inside the collection area, where all of your samples are coming from, once these are all taken care of by other robots, everything is coming from a 2-foot by 4-foot area for all 4 robots. And your space of your horizontal constraint of what you're allowed to do. Limiting of scores, congestion on the field can limit cycle times. Cycle times is kind of how I go through strategy with my teams and kind of what we want to do. The more cycles you can do, the more you score. So we kind of try to figure out a cycle time that we want to be at by a certain time in the season. Legal limits to controlling of samples versus specimens, 1. And are there legal ways to limit opposing alliances' scores? Technically, yes. How does VCS Robotics create their strategy? We read the game manual. We read the game manual as a group. We read the game manual as a group with each person taking a rule out and reading it. We will literally do this on Tuesday. Did I say we read the game manual? I really need to update this so it says competition manual. So you may ask, what does VCS Robotics do to create a strategy? We read the game manual. Seriously, what else does VCS Robotics do? We read the game manual.
Really?
Right? Other things we do, seriously, we split into multiple groups. This is how we do it. So Tuesday afternoon, both of our teams will come together. It's a mandatory day. They will then split into different groups. And this is actually kind of different how we do it now. We will split into groups, not just per teams. We might mix the teams together. They will split into groups. Each comes up with what they feel is most important to them and how they would like to score and their strategy. The group then creates a strategy. Group strategies are then presented in front of everyone, including the other teams. Once they're presented, they then look at Q&As for how they looked into the game. With that, each team then votes their best strategy and how they want to do it. We basically split up. Last year, we were almost 30 students. So when you have 30 students between 2 teams, it's kind of hard to figure out what your exact strategy is. So breaking down into smaller groups within your team can help figure out different strategies that you might not think of. Because if we're all real with each other, half the time you have somebody that might voice their opinion more, and that's what you're going to go with. Whereas if you do these smaller groups, you can get a lot more across and figure out what the actual best one is to go with. That's why we do smaller groups. Notice that I said strategy, not robot design. And I already have to yell at my students the first time anyways because they start trying to do robot design. We go over strategy first. Strategy. Why? Once we have a strategy in place, then the design process of the robot can start. We also read the game manual. You can't design a robot unless you know what you want to do on the field during those 2 minutes. How are you going to score those points? What is your strategy? How are you going to do it? Figure that out before you try to start building a robot. Yeah, you can just build a robot, but one that has a strategy, 2 good robots, one that has a strategy, one that doesn't, they're going to excel. Words. I'm dyslexic. So Matt, you may ask, what is the strategy for this game?
Read the game manual.
Read the game.
That's for you to figure out. Yeah, and to read the game manual. But I can help you with a few things. Some pointers for Into the Deep. Specific robot function and auto IntelliUp. This is, I think, more important this year than most years, is specifying what exactly you want to focus on. This year's field, and we'll go over it, while it's an open field, it really is a segregated field where you can be in your own little zone and never touch another robot, even your own alliance partner. So specific robot function in the auto and IntelliUp. Simple robots. For those rookies, if you can't build a much bigger, not really good, if you can't build a advanced robot, simple robots are not bad. Auto-wise, you can literally drive in a straight line into the observation zone and gain 3 points in auto and 3 points in IntelliUp. It's not hard to do. Build small. A smaller overall robot, frame-wise, can expand further out in each direction. So if your frame is smaller, let's say you want to extend into that submersible, if your frame's smaller, technically I can extend farther into that submersible because I'm still within my 42, but I've used less space in my frame. Simple robot, KISS method. It's not bad at all. This robot here is one of mine. It is a very simple robot. It picks up a ball, it puts it in a lift. The lift goes up and it scores it in a goal. And notice the wording on that robot.
World champion.
World champion. Simple robots can win worlds. It doesn't look that simple. I guess it kind of does. It's a big block. Simple robots can win worlds. We literally pick a ball up through a lift, put it in the lift that goes up, and drop it in a goal. That's all we really did. And we had a good autonomous. Good autonomouses can help you, especially back in 2015. So it's been a minute. Other things, other pointers. Specimens can actually slide pretty easily on the chamber when fully clipped. Even when they're on top of it, they can actually slide pretty well. Just keep in mind, if you barely put it on that bar, it will fall off if you run into that structure hard enough. But they can actually slide on that bar pretty easily. 16 samples can fit into a basket dumped randomly, not set in there all nice and neat. 16 samples can fit in a basket before it starts overflowing. Newer and even veteran teams, you don't have to focus on everything. Do one thing well, not everything. Do one thing well. Even you veteran teams. Veteran teams love to try to do everything. Focus on one thing this year, especially with this year's game. You don't have to do everything. Oh, don't get penalty points. It's 5 and 15. That's a lot of points to lose. You don't lose the points. You give the points to the other alliance. So they gain 5 or 15 more points every time you do something wrong. And some of the rules this year, if you keep doing it, it's going to lead to a yellow card pretty dang quickly. How do I do that, Matt? Well, you don't get penalty points. You know how else you do it? Read the game manual. Even more exclamation points. Read it. So, this is kind of charts that I always come up with. I'm a little lucky. I get the game about 2 weeks before you guys do, so I get to go through the game to come up with some of this stuff and to actually answer your questions when the game comes out, because a lot of questions are asked. So, auto. Some pointers. This is a little confusing on how you look at it, but I always look at it from here. Doability. How easy is it probably to do? This is how I think it is. So very high, meaning a lot of people can do it, to very low is, it's going to be a lot harder to do that. So very high, literally driving into the zone. That's really easy to do that. Gets you 3 points. Whereas when we go down here, 37 points in auto, but it's a lot harder to do. Different things. In auto, I've come up with, at least in my mind, different kinds of robots and what their function is in auto. So auto, you have, at least in my mind, you have a net neutral or net robot, or you have a chamber, both are technically chamber bots if you're good, robots. But you have a net robot and you have an observation robot. And what do I mean by that? And that kind of helps this chart here. Net robots. With net robots, you'll start on this portion of the field. For those that are behind me that can't see, you'll start on this portion of the field. Net robots will then drive. Here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stand over here and use a pointer. That way people can see me. I can't see the pointer. Never mind. That was worth a try. Next time. Net robots are going to drive here. Good ones will score their specimen. They'll put a specimen on their robot instead of a sample. They'll score that one specimen, because in auto, you have a maximum between the whole alliance of 2 specimens on that chamber. There's no way to get up more specimens in auto. There is no way to get more specimens, because your human player cannot touch your clips during auto. Huh?
Banned yet. The rule book doesn't ban it yet. That was from Rich.
You're not allowed to put stuff into the field.
Rich said you could.
Human players are not allowed to enter the field during auto. Right? So you can stop your robot. The human players can do that. Basically, you can't be touching anything. So you'll have net robots that are scoring their chamber, and then they just focus either on grabbing from the center or grabbing from these 3 neutral samples, because these are specific locations that you know that they're there. It's not randomization this year. You know 3 net neutral samples are there. Neutral samples are there. Score those in the basket. You can gain quite a few points if you do that. So you can get up to almost, 35 points if you're scoring all those. The other robot will score less points, but will help you in the long run in teleop. That is a chamber robot that does your specimen, but focuses on the observation alliance area. That robot will start against the wall, drive forward, and then will score these 3 alliance specific into their observation zone. They will score them into there. That gets you no points for it, but it preps your human player for teleop. If you can prep your human player with extra samples to put some clips on, now you've created, let's say both alliances use their chamber bots, now you have 2 neutrals in here, but you have those 3 that your human player can pre-populate specimens, either onto the wall or onto the field by the time you get back over there. Teleop. If you've had that observation bot there, the easiest thing that they can do then is drive literally in a zigzag for chambers. For teleop, you'll start here, you'll grab a sample, drive over, drop your sample, grab your specimen, drive back, score, go back and forth. Notice that the next robot who's focusing on the basket or basket bot in teleop, that was your net zone during auto, he's driving over here in an L formation or a curved formation. And he's just scoring back and forth. The other alliance is doing the same exact thing. You're never touching each other. This is if you're not driving into the submersible. That's how I see this game being played higher up. You're never touching each other. Now, if you're a rookie team and you don't have much on there, you can create a little bit of mayhem for this year's game. But if you're going to do it, you need to pay attention to the rules. Defense is allowed this year, but you need to pay attention to where you're playing defense. We'll kind of go over that real quick. If you're going to play defense in this year's game, playing defense near this zone, let's say you're red playing defense against blue. if you're trying to stop him from driving back and forth scoring, if blue somehow pushes you into his net zone, you as red get penalized immediately. Doesn't matter that blue pushed you in. The way the rules are written, you immediately as red get penalized. That isn't the case over here. If a specimen robot that is just driving back and forth to score specimens somehow pushes red into their observation zone, red will not get penalized if blue is the one that pushed them in. But you get immediately penalized here. So keep that in mind where you play defense and whatnot, if you're going to play defense. With defense this year, because most of the field this year is really you're in your own zone, you have to kind of focus on what kind of drivetrain you want. Do you want more maneuverability on your robot to score, or do you want to stand your ground? And if you went through David's workshop here, there's different ways that you can stand your ground. If you're a Mecanum, that gives you the mobility you want. The problem with Mecanum most of the time is you can't stand your ground. Whereas if you go with a 6-wheel drivetrain, especially with the treads that he has, you can't push around that much, especially if you're heavy like his robots are. That's another thing this year. You're hanging, so you might not want to be extremely heavy, especially because you have to climb the rack or the submersible. So if you guys want pictures of those two, there's the two of them together. Yes?
So if you do play defensive and push the other robot into your would that be a major or minor?
Into the net or into the observation? Where the human player is or where they're scoring the baskets?
Scoring baskets.
Scoring baskets, if you push the opposing alliance in there, they will get penalized. If you push... I think it's a minor. Sorry, I finished this at 1 o'clock this morning. I was setting up this stuff. All right, sorry. Into the deep. Into the deep.
Into the center stage.
Into the center stage. All right. Guys, focus for a second. So, again, we'll go over a few things. Different robots that I see playing this year's game and kind of the naming that I've come up with them. You got your defensive robots. Those are your rookies or your veterans that are struggling to build something this year. They can just be kind of a nuisance on the field. If you're going to play defense quite a bit, weigh your robot down. There's no weight limit this year. If you make your robot extremely heavy, it's harder to push a heavy robot. Keep in mind, once you weigh your robot down, it's going to be harder on your electronics and your motors. But you can literally strap a weight to your robot from the weight room and be a little bit more of a nuisance if you're going to be a defensive robot. Huh? As long as painted. Different other robots. Net zone scorer, that guy's focusing on your baskets. Your basket bot, your observation bot. Again, basket and specimen, both in your auto and your teleop. I would focus more on one thing than the other this year, especially with the way the field's laid out. You guys can basically stay in your own little zone scoring all day long. And you only have to drive about 6 feet back and forth within those areas. So why keep getting in each other's way? Especially if there's only 20 that you can score of specimens and a lot more of neutrals. Game manual. Read it. All right. Q&As. I would love to answer Q&As so that everyone can hear it, because I know a lot more of you have gone through some of the game manual, and I can answer things that at least I know. What's up?
How many specimens or samples can you carry at a time?
One sample or one specimen, one or the other. You cannot have both. Yes.
Is there a time limit of parking in the opponent's observation zone?
Parking in the opponent's observation zone. So you're supposed to stay out of each other's. So if you're red, you're supposed to stay out of that area. You can't be going in there on purpose.
Okay, so you said there's no penalty for getting
Pushed into it, but you immediately need to get out of it.
Gotcha.
But do not be driving into there on purpose. Something to keep in mind during end game, ascent. The taped off white zones is your ascent zone. If a blue robot drives into their blue ascent zone over here, and red robot touches them, red robot's going to get penalized. If blue robot's coming over here for some reason, and red touches them, blue will get penalized. Don't be in their ascent zone during an end game. We're going to go back because I didn't actually go over it.
Reading the game manual?
Well, yeah, reading the game manual. I want to go over the hanging real quick because some people were confused about that, and I thought I had it in here, but apparently I didn't. This is what happens when you finish it at 1 o'clock in the morning.
What you should have done, you should put like on the background of the slide, read the game manual every slide.
Right? All right. Well, if I can find it. Okay. End game. You have your level 1, 2, and 3. When we look at the rungs, there we go. Here's your floor, your low, and your high. To be able to get to the high rung, you have to follow a certain way of climbing. I don't know the exact wording I'm trying to figure out. So a level 1 is touching the floor, touching the low rung. A level 2 is off the floor, touching the low or the high. Keep in mind that you can't be on the floor, touch both, and then lift yourself up. That's not a level 2 because you touched the high bar and we're still touching the floor. You cannot whatsoever touch that high bar unless you are off the floor. So to get up here, even for a level 2, you have to be off the ground by hanging on that low bar to even touch the high bar. That level 2, basically, if you were in the middle of climbing, so you're off the ground doing it legally, and you don't get all the way up, at least you get a level 2, which is that low bar. A level 3 is fully above that low rung. Again, not touching that high rung from the floor. Yep.
Are you penalized if you touch it?
Basically, you'd have to restart. If I remember right, you have to basically restart your climb because you're voiding basically your climb setup. So if you cheated your way up, you don't get the points. Yep.
It's hard for me to see, and I'll look at the game manual, I promise, but can you pick the width across?
The width across for the rungs or the chambers? The hanging?
Yeah.
So they're 44 inches-ish across.
Okay.
So you can fit both robots side by side.
But you wouldn't be able to like tilt unless you really had a, okay, I got you.
So they're 44 across. The difference between both of the rungs is only 16 inches. So the bottom rung's 20 feet off, or sorry, 20 feet. 20 inches, that would be a really interesting feat. I've seen FTC robots be 20 feet tall. It was my senior year.
Was it scary?
Yes, that was the one year where you were allowed to run. You had to, if the robot started falling over, they would literally allow you to run away from the field.
What? And what was the limit again that we could, the horizontal limit?
Horizontal limit is going out. Vertical limit, you can go anything you want.
Okay.
Horizontal's 42. That includes your frame parameter.
So technically, you could go 20 feet up.
Technically, yes. You could just keep going up. There's no point to it.
If you fall over, you get penalized.
All right, we're doing.
The year that I saw 20 feet tall robots, the way the game was, you would put a ball in a basket, and every 6 inches that basket went, you got 10 points. When they came out with the game, they had a 4-foot stick because they thought teams were only going to go 4 feet. I built a robot that went 13 feet. And then I got to Worlds, and there was robots that going 21 or 22 feet tall. They were ridiculous. And they would pick up that one basket for the whole game. Yep.
just constantly drops balls?
Just the one basket and ball.
Can we have more stories about the 20 feet robots?
Later on, yes. Let's focus on this year's game. Yeah.
Can you put your,
Yes, of course.
say,
Guys,
can you like have a game strategy of just pushing the opponent's robots into your net zone?
so you can't be gaining points by doing others harm. But you can play defense. So you can go over and pin a robot as long as you pin it correctly and you back off correctly. You can be doing stuff like that. But if your whole strategy is to take that robot and purposely keep pushing him into that net zone, then you're going to get in trouble with the refs. Keep in mind, it's a momentary, continuous, and repeated or something like that. It is specified in there what is momentary, what is, I think it's continuous, and what is repeated. Repeated is many times within a match. Yep.
Can the robot be aiming from the low, touching the barrier, but off the ground when it reaches for the high?
Technically, yes. Yeah. The barrier does not count as the floor.
Okay.
So you can be like resting on the barrier.
Technically, yeah. The barrier does not count as floor.
Is your teammate allowed to push your robot up? Are you allowed to?
You are not allowed to. So this is something that I was going over with David earlier. When it comes to buddy hangs, buddy help, all that, you are not allowed to pick up your alliance partner and hang with them. You are not allowed to hang and then your alliance partner hang on them. That's where we need to read the game manual. It's I don't have it right in here, but it's like 10.5 point something, I think. It's in the G section of the game manual. What time is it? It's probably
Still got 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay. If you guys are leaving, just quietly leave. When you're leaving, if you're in the folding chairs, please fold it back up and put it back on that rack. Yep.
How long is it considered? How long can you pin your opponents?
So, pinning. One of my team members, come up here. You're gonna be my your other robot. All right. So, let's say this is the field wall or something. If I'm a pinning robot, and these are each of these tiles on the floor are a pad, basically. So we're gonna space ourselves out actually pretty well here. So he's here. If I want to pin another robot, I can come over, pin him. 1, 2, 3, 4. By 5, I need to back off 2 feet or a full tile. Once I back off 2 feet, if he's running around and everything, I can go back and hit him again. I can keep doing that. But if he's sitting there running around and everything, and I go like this and go 1, 2, 3, don't back off 2 feet and come back, 4, 5. You did not back off 2 feet, so the count continues.
Blink twice if you need help.
Yep, blink twice if you need help, right? So, pinning, it's a 5-point count. Yep. And you have to back off 2 feet. Don't be pushing them purposely into your net zone and everything like that.
So theoretically, if you see your opponent being pinned, you can pin the rope. You can pin the other opponent.
Yep.
To pin
Yep.
the robot.
Now, here is something that you need to pay attention to on pinning. If I go and pin Matt again, let's say I'm pinning him 1, 2, 3, 4, and I start backing off, and he chases me, I could go right back at him because I'm backing off and he's chasing after me. I can start it and it starts at 1 again. If you chase the guy that just pinned you, the 5 count starts again. Yep.
You have to back off 2 feet when they start chasing you?
If you back off, yeah, basically you still need to back off almost that 2 feet, but the count can start at 1 again. Yep, guys.
If you create a sample from your specimen, you have to lay that back on the field for your to pick up and hang it on the robot.
So, when you create a specimen, the human player, when they create a specimen, that can get hung on the wall or in the observation zone. A human player is not allowed to set it onto a robot. The robot and a human player cannot be in the observation zone at the same time, just like last year and the year before that. Where these slides, I gotta upload them still, but they will be on the blog. Yep.
How many specimens is a human player allowed to make?
So you have 20 Alliance specific samples and 20 clips. You can only create a maximum of 20. Because you cannot put a clip on a neutral sample. That is not a specimen. It's not allowed. It will not score. Yep.
Can you go inside of the secure area?
Yes. He just asked a question that I would definitely not do this year. And I will say why. Guys, I will say why not to do it. Yes, it is legal to go inside of the submersible where all those samples are. Keep in mind these are an inch and a half tall. Most robots I see don't have ground clearance. So if you prop yourself on top of all of them, you're stopping gameplay. You'll start getting penalized for being stuck. So pay attention. If you're really going to go in there, do not get stuck in there. And if you're going to go in there, don't do others harm when they're reaching in to grab their samples. If you're in there causing mayhem, running into everybody, you inside are going to get penalized before they do. Yep.
This is a super cool question. How many samples/specimens can you hold at once?
One.
Just one. Okay.
One total thing. So one of these or one of these. Well, technically not even one of these. I can do this or this. I can't have both.
Okay.
Behind you.
Will you get penalized for taking opposing alliances?
Yes. So, something to read in the game manual. If I'm blue and I'm in the submersible, rummaging around trying to grab stuff. Let's say I'm reaching in. If I reach in and I'm blue and I pick up red and I read it as red and spit it back out, you're not going to get penalized for that.
So it's if you intentionally.
Yeah. Where you'll get penalized for it, let's say I'm extending in, I pick up red and I pull out of the submersible. I'm now controlling their sample. So you can go through and do that. You're safe for the most part inside that submersible.
Okay, so you can move it around in the submersible
Yes.
as more of a defensive strategy to the other side, perhaps.
That's where you need to read the game manual because it is very specific of when and what you can do inside of there. Yep. Guys, I can't even hear who's asking a question. It's part of the rules and the wording. If you go in there and try to push all of those samples out, you're controlling more of them because you're pushing all of them out of there. There is a 2 inch, I keep saying feet, 2 inch barrier. This is 1.5. Yes, if you're driving around there, one of them might fly off and fly out of it.
Don't worry.
Don't know where that went.
I get them
Right?
all the time too.
But if you're purposely either launching them out of there, which you can't do, or you're human players, if you guys have read the game manual, have you figured, who's read the game manual on human players? Nobody has. Because one of the rules in there, a human player may not yeet. It literally says yeet. May not yeet a sample. It literally says may not yeet a sample. All right? All right, any other questions? I think we're 3 minutes to. Yep.
Is the limit of how many samples you can hold, is that going to be strict? Like if you're touching 2 at a time?
Let's say you're holding one and for some reason one of them's laying on the field. If you start plowing it and you're plowing it where it's literally following with you, you're going to get in trouble. If you're holding one and you drive past one and it just goes like that and keeps goes away, you're fine. It's when you start controlling it in multiple directions that you're going to get in trouble. Just don't plow through them. Yep. My blue thing in my hand? You can look at it. I need it back. All right. We're going to end a little bit early